Hey everyone, my name is Sarah, and the title of my presentation is Romanticism in the 21st Century. So, I am doing this presentation on The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery, a 2006 novel, and Amelie, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet from 2001. So, my main thesis would be how does the elegance of the hedgehog and Amelie kind of create this romantic Paris for modern times? Essentially, I'll be going over topics that deal with ideas of class or feeling seen or unseen and finding beauty in everyday life. My topic is relevant to the course because I'm going into the long tradition of Romanticism in Parisian culture. We know that in the 19th century we had romantic writers and painters like Victor Hugo, Baudelaire, and of course the Impressionists. And they would see the beauty in life's simplicities. For example, Baudelaire's Flaneur, the city wanderer, he would really embody, I think, that emotional exploration. And these artists turned Paris into a symbol of emotion and beauty, and with that, this sense of individuality. And now in the 21st century, I think Romanticism is still very much alive and visible, but in a more digital form, of course. Instead of poets and painters, we have influencers and photographers who are kind of curating beauty in our daily lives. And I think that the main difference was that older romanticism was more so about artistic rebellion, the freedom that would come with that. And I think this deep emotional tie. Whereas now, perhaps, I think it's more commercialized. It's consumer culture. This is what we live in now, and sure, you'll see the love and the wonder. It's still there, but I think it's specifically for the feed. And I think with the idea of and like with it, the idea of romanticism, I think can at times feel artificial or fleeting. The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery is a novel set in a fancy apartment building in Paris. It follows Renee, who is a middle-aged concierge who is basically hiding the fact that she's super intelligent. She has a passion for the arts. She's extremely philosophical, and she feels the need to fit this stereotype of a simple caretaker or concierge due to her social class. And it also follows Paloma, who is the daughter of one of the wealthy tenants in the building, and she is a 12-year-old girl who is secretly planning on not only setting her apartment on fire, but also ending her life on her 13th birthday because she sees the adults as fake and superficial, meaningless. She's definitely against the bourgeoisie, having been raised by wealthy parents who she seems to kind of despise. Um, As the novel continues, we find out that a tenant passes away in the building and another tenant takes his place, who is a man named Kakuro, and he is a Japanese man. He is very kind and he's thoughtful, and I think he's a pivotal character in the novel because through him, um, we see the character development in Renee and Paloma. Um, he is the one who first notices the the hidden depth that Renee has to her and befriends her. And through this friendship, um, both then Renee and Paloma begin to connect, and I think they just start to see the beauty in everyday life, and then finding the meaning in all the small things, and those elegant moments that maybe Paloma once took for granted, or maybe moments that, Renee kind of just observed but didn't really take in. Um, and so basically, this book is kind of about seeing the beauty and the meaning beneath the surface, and kind of breaking those social barriers, and how kindness and art can come together and make life worth living. Um, as for the film Amelie, which is directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, it follows a young woman, and she's very shy. She's living in Montmartre, and um, she discovers this little hidden box of childhood treasures in her apartment. She decides to then secretly help people around her kind of find happiness in small, and I guess you could say unexpected ways. So she um, kind of like, she's very imaginative, and she creates these little adventures, and she watches life happen from a distance. And in doing so, I think she also kind of slowly learns to open up to love, um, especially when she meets one of the characters, Nino, who is also very quirky, similar to her. And he actually collects discarded photo booth pictures. And so I think that um, this movie is more so whimsical and colorful, and I think it just has to do a lot with your like imagination and kindness, and just finding the beauty in everyday life. And personally, I love Amelie so much, um, and I think it's because it's just, yeah, just romanticizing life, and I think it's beautiful. Here I will be talking about the setting of both the novel and the film, and uh, Paris as a character. So, Emily takes place in Montmartre, in the 18th arrondissement, and it is a bohemian neighborhood famous for, its hilly streets and artists and cafes. You enter settings like Le Café de Dumoulin, where Emily works as a waitress, and her apartment, the grocery shops, Canal Saint Martin, photo booths, and metro stations. I think that the film's mood is very bright and whimsical, and here Paris symbolizes a playground for these tiny miracles that are influenced by Emily's small but good deeds. It's the film's like full of fantasy and imagination as well as healing, and I think here anyone can be special. Um, in The Elegance of the Hedgehog, uh, the novel is set in Rue de Grenelle, in the 7th arrondissement, and it's in an upscale apartment building. Um, it's elegant, and it's an upper class neighborhood. And so here you enter settings like the concierge's apartment, other tenants' apartments, and the hallways and the staircases of the building. It's definitely more confined and introspective in comparison to Emily, but the mood that this setting depicts is quiet and elegant, but at the same time claustrophobic, with a sense of alienation. And Paris here symbolizes social division, and I guess how beauty is being hidden under social masks. The relevant theory that I would like to apply to my topic is that of the flaneur, um, basically observation and aesthetics of everyday life. So the idea of the flaneur It comes from the 19th century Paris, and Charles Baudelaire is the perfect example, and I did mention him prior. So the flaneur is someone who walks the city, a wanderer, and it's not just to move, but to observe and to feel and to find the beauty and meaning in those small details of everyday life. I think he represents the romanticism and fascination within the city as a place of beauty and discovery, but also of alienation. And he transforms everyday Paris into art by simply noticing it. So much like Baudelaire, Amelie doesn't wander aimlessly, but she stops to notice the small things that others seem to ignore. Where in contrast, the elegance of the hedgehog presents the flaneur as trapped, trapped inside of this building, but similarly observes the tenants the way a flaneur would observe crowds and other things. She analyzes, or Renee at least analyzes gestures and tastes, as does Paloma, who records her observations about life and beauty in her little diary. So here, the flaneur is depicted more as, I guess, observing thoughts and feelings. And I think it's more inward, I would say, It feels more intellectual and emotional rather than spatial. Here are 3 examples of both the film and the novel that apply to my topic. So the first one is from The Elegance of the Hedgehog, in the part of the novel where Renee and Kakuro have dinner. So Kakuro invites Renee to his apartment for dinner. She agrees, and she experiences for the first time this genuine kindness and respect from someone of a higher social ranking or social class. And in this moment, she starts to open herself up to connection and allow that the beauty in human relationships. And I think it also kind of challenges her belief in how the rich are always pretentious and how she should stay invisible. But in this moment, there's kind of like a moment of clarity, and I think it's a very important scene in the book. The next one is Paloma kind of changing her view of life. And so, like at the beginning, Paloma believes that life is meaningless and she wants to take her life at the age of 13. But I think that through the friendships that she finds in Renee and Kakuro, she starts to see the beauty as well in the small fleeting moments. Tea with Renee and talking about art and all those kind gestures that I think that by the end, she completely changes her idea that life isn't worth living. As a matter of fact, after Renee passes away, she does die tragically. In that moment, Paloma decides that she will basically live life to the fullest. And my third example would be the camellias scene, which I think is my favorite scene. So basically it's about it's this part where Paul, who is a small character in the novel, he's son of a famous food critic who also lives in the building. And Paul's been battling drug addiction, and is kind of like this lost soul from the upper class who's been alienated by his father. So anyways, Renee plants camellias outside the building, and Paul, who's kind of been distant and in despair for years, notices them one day, and this becomes a turning point for him. He then comes up and asks Renee, what are the name of those flowers? And she tells him those are camellias, and that she plants them and whatnot. And so later he thanks her, saying that it's thanks to the camellias that he's still alive, and this actually causes Renee to shed a tear. And I think that this moment it's like quiet, but it's very it's very symbolic. For Paul, seeing the beauty in something simple and alive kind of gives him like this feeling or some sort of meaning again after just years of addiction and feeling numb. And then for Renee, it kind of was like, it was a bit of a confirmation to her that just caring for these flowers, it's in just such a humble way. Um, it it matters, and that it has the power to reach another person, or at least the person's soul, as it did for Paul. And I really enjoyed that part of the novel. And for Amelie, three examples are basically, it's mostly her secretly, helping people, and as well as opening up to love. The first example is when she finds the old box of the childhood treasures in her apartment, and she returns it to the man who hasn't seen it for who knows decades. And she, like, I think that moment is what inspires her to continue to help others by setting up like these little random acts of kindness, at least anonymously. The second one would be when she helps Lucian, who is the boy who works at the grocery store. She helps him stand up to his boss, who's extremely rude. And another, it's funny, is when she takes her father's garden gnome and sends it around the world. And that pushes her father to kind of leave the house and travel again. And that's very sweet. He was able to kind of rekindle his sense of adventure. And I really enjoyed that part too. And then the third example would be when she finally opens up to love with Nino. When she first sees Nino, she's super fascinated, but she's very shy. So, she comes up with that elaborate game, putting clues everywhere. And then she kind of realizes that to have like love and connection, it requires the person to engage with the other person. And so when she finally meets with Nino face to face, I think this kind of like marks her not only willingness to be vulnerable, but also that emotional growth that um, that transpired throughout the film. But yeah, so those would be my examples. So to conclude, in both The Elegance of the Hedgehog and Amelie, the characters learn to see beauty in life and open up to others. We see Renee, the concierge, hides her love for the arts and books until Kakuro kind of notices, you know, her her love for Camellia's and invites her to dinner. And then um, this helps her kind of realize that she just doesn't have to pretend to be someone else. And Paloma also changes. She starts out thinking life is pointless, but kind of after seeing Renee's quiet appreciation for beauty and kindness, she decides life is worth living. And well, in Amelie, the main character, she secretly helps people, like returning that lost box of childhood treasures. And here, when she meets Nino, I think that she realizes that in order to connect with someone, that she needs to take a chance, and that's where true happiness lies. And so I think both stories show the small acts of kindness and noticing simple things can make life beautiful. um, I think that both stories also try to heal modern loneliness by paying attention to these little details. And um, the only places that they differ, I guess you could say, is that in the Elegance of a Hedgehog, the novel is more realistic and socially aware, whereas I think Emily, the film is definitely more lighthearted and whimsical, and um, it's visually beautiful. And but I think like the bigger picture, it still shows how romantic Paris still fascinates us, regardless of it all. And it still feels warm and intimate, despite it potentially hiding some of the city's inequalities and whatnot. But yes, phenomenal film. A bit of a long read, but very much worth it. Thank you so much, you guys.